Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to our swing trading. My name is Mike Fairbourn, Senior Manager Trading and Derivatives at Charles Schwab. It is good to be back with all of you. And I'm sure many of you have eyes on the market, a lot of moves in technology and energy, as we'll take a look at in just a bit. But I did want to take a look at swing moves, both at highs and at lows, potential moves off of both, as well as some earnings lined up for us this week and coming up shortly. So with that, a big welcome to each of you. Good afternoon to you, Will, Josh, Jenny, and many others here. We've got Jay Richardson. Hello to you, Jay Richardson, as well as Tony and Scott. Aloha to you, sir, and many others here. We are joined in the chat by our good friend, our good friend of the show, who's been here with us quite a bit, Ben Watson, 30, I think 33-year veteran of the markets. Ben, very knowledgeable on the topic and spends a lot of time on the road. Anyways, folks, any questions, comments you have, throw those in the chat so we can address those for you. I do like topic requests as well. I do like to scan through and just take a look at those. If there's anything that you guys are looking at specifically, I'd love to take a look at that with you. But hey, we got a lot to look at. So let's just do this. Let's just dive on into some disclosures here to get rolling. Starting off with, this material is intended for general information purposes only and educational purposes only. Now, options carry a high level of risk, folks. They are not suitable for all investors. Short options can be assigned at any time up to expiration, regardless of the in-the-money amount. ITM option does have a high risk of being assigned early. And in a short put, risk purchasing the underlying stock at the strike price when the market price of the stock will likely be lower. The paperMoney software application is for education purposes only as well. Vesting does involve risk, including loss of principal for some products and strategies, loss of more than your initial investment. Now, there's no guarantee that the execution of a stop order, which we'll be looking at today on some trades, example trades, will be at or near the stop price, and past performance is no guarantee of future results. Dividends, not guaranteed. Next slide. There we go. Futures options trading does involve substantial risk, not suitable for all investors. As I always tell everybody, Ben Watson teaches futures on Tuesdays. Be mindful of that. He does a great job there, but we don't do that in this. We don't trade futures in this class in terms of example trades. We just look at the charts. Okay, and I've been told to say that every time. That's why I keep going through that because it is an important distinction. Just so you guys know, I'm sure you do at this point. I say it every week. All right. Well, on that note, hey, we're pulling up the S&P 500. Yeah, you're probably well aware of where it's at. What's been going on there, folks? I had thought, I think many people did, that at that 7,500, kind of that big round number from 7,000. Notice we did pause a little bit there. I mean, 7K right there. Boom. That's where I'm pointing to, right? Move that little arrow over 7,000. Sometimes at these big round numbers, you'll see something. Look at 75. Okay, so that was probably the biggest pullback that we had right around 75. We pulled back a little bit and boom. Now, sometimes when that happens, not every time, but sometimes when that does occur, what we'll tend to do is we might tend to fall back to that prior low. Now, that doesn't mean we have to. But if you can't, excuse me, that prior high, and sometimes you get a bounce over there off those levels. And if it does just continue to extend, by the way, a lot of things can happen here. Really, we've been seeing a sideways channel for much of this trend. I mean, when it goes flat, that is, right? Sideways, little sideways there, a little bit off the bottom too, but not too common. It was really tech pulling us higher, as we're also pretty well aware of. There's a good look at the NASDAQ really, fueling a lot of the S&P 500. What are they saying? 40+% of the S&P is in the Mag 7. Mag 7 has recovered. It has not taken out its high from that we saw in October of last year. Yeah, that's pre-Halloween of last year. We did not take out that high yet. There could be still a little bit of a flag pattern in here, right? And that's what we look at in this class. And by the way, a quick note on swing trades. I mean, that's one of the patterns we'll look at. Patterns are interesting. One of the things I did want to point out, though, to everybody is that because we did have some questions that are coming up about swing trading, sometimes traders will look at swing trades very, very short term in nature, and you can do that. A lot of times 3 to 20 days. But I think one thing that really does characterize swing trades in a big, big way, at least how a lot of traders will look at them. And I'm going to go ahead and let's just step out to a 2-year chart off of our Mag 7. Now we could look at this if we wanted to. I'm going to choose one of the Mag 7s within here instead of adding them all together and creating our own little Mag 7. Let's just try Apple just just as an example here. Okay. Now, when we look at swing trading in general, I just want to make sure we're getting this foundational point down. And I'd like to hear any questions or comments you have about it if there are any questions. What oftentimes we're looking for are, first of all, the direction of the trend, higher highs and higher lows. But with that, we're trying to find those areas, and I've zoomed out to kind of a bigger term scale. If I were to zoom in now that we've identified an area where prices are running, the thing that we're trying to find here is, hey, is there an anticipation, maybe not so much of a little type move, whatever that might be, but maybe a bigger move within the longer term trend. We're trying to capture maybe some of these bigger moves within the trend as opposed to minor moves. Now, a lot of times you're going to find this, not every time, but to see that established move, let's just make it big and clear. In many, many cases, you're oftentimes above your 20 moving average. Okay. We hit this early on, but this was several classes ago. I'm talking months and months ago, quarters ago, actually, where we talked about this. But we need to, I mean, it's going through my mind as I teach this class, but I want to keep bringing it up because I think it can be very, very helpful. Case in point, let's just pull one up. And this is just honestly on the fly on Apple, but I'm sorry, you're not going to find it there. You're going to find it over here. We are in Apple. Let's go into a 20. See, I've got the 20s set up, a number of 20s. Some will look at longer term moves as well. Here is our 20. We'll replace the 50 in here. We're going to make this all very, very clear so we can see. Sometimes it's 20 on tech type stocks or stocks that are growing, growth stocks. Sometimes those stocks that don't move nearly as fast, you might find something like staples, materials, industrials. You can look for the 30-day moving average. So it's more like instead of a month, maybe a month and a half, sometimes even longer traders will look. But let's go ahead and just plot this out here. Let's make it actually a little bit bigger so we could see. And I've got to actually, yeah, let's make sure that we can see. What did I do? All right, it's gone. All right, let's get back to it. Fine. What did I do? I clicked. Oh, okay. We're going to show our study for sure. Let's just change this back to green, implying maybe an upward move. Am I missing anything here? Okay, it should show up now. There it goes. Okay, some key points. Now, this is just me looking and talking about swing trading big picture. Let's get this foundational point down. Again, we'll just keep hitting it. When we start to break above, remember I was actually even showing you over here, little moves, little moves. We don't really know where we're at. The trend really hasn't been defined over here so much. It's not really a higher high and a higher low like we saw here. That's a higher high and a higher low. We went down and we touched it. We broke back up above it. We remained above it, remained above it. So whatever indicators we're looking at, or even just price action, holds. We've looked at the Jesse Livermore. We've looked at we looked at one last week, with a couple of the highs and the lows. Actually, last week was two patterns within one, flag within a larger term flag, or patterns with patterns. But we'd also looked at a number of different ways to try to spot that bounce. And recently, in fact, we can even look at it today because maybe you guys aren't aware of it. We have looked at the super trend. It is a code that was created by an individual by the name of Mobius, man or woman, I'm not sure. Uh, I had adapted that into a scan. That's on our Think script. You guys could take a look at. I'm going to pull it up today because I'm just bringing it up. But that has more of a tendency to find companies above, let's say, for example, a 20. But that's why the 20 can be useful. So you'll notice in a lot of stuff we look at, and by the way, here is one today I wanted to highlight for you. Remember, I was talking about stocks off the top and off the bottom? This is one that's off, maybe could be considered off the bottom. I have to review some stocks first. I got in a little bit deep here, but I wanted to still explain this. I was looking at stocks that were trending up, right? This stock had been trending down. I don't have a ton of information on this company. It's just starting to pop cloud-based. And by the way, some of the software has been hit a little bit. By the way, there's an interesting little note on Microsoft out there. I don't know if you guys read about it, but it was about there were a number of layoffs. They were laying off all these software engineers due to AI. But did anybody hear this? It was fascinating. It was they they stopped laying off the engineers and they said, well, we want to keep our software engineers because we are they're using Anthropic and they just factored in like we're using over a $500 million a year in AI. We think we can actually do better with our software engineers. Now, I don't know if that's going to prompt moves off the bottom, but I can just tell you this, that news coincided with a lot of these software companies starting to make a move. In other words, we're seeing value to these software engineers. They're able to do things collectively that AI, is very expensive, and they just said we'd rather just keep our people. They didn't want to just cut back so much. Okay, so it's interesting. By the way, I've got to throw it out there now. It's just news out there. We don't know what could happen in the future, but I'm just giving you some information. Let's put the correct symbol in this time. This is what we saw on Microsoft when we started to get some of that information. We saw a bit of a bounce coming off here as well. A little bit. You guys might recognize. Well, I know you will because we talk about the flag so much. But like the flag here, see it? Where are we at now? You know what started happening over here? Some of that information started disseminating and we broke above the 200 day. Now, was I even planning on looking at this today? I was not. I wasn't planning on looking at Apple or necessarily Vive with the 200 day, VEEV. Excuse me, the 20 period moving average. Gosh, 20, not 200. But you'll notice that some of this information can coincide with the swing trade time frame. 20. We're looking for that trend and we want to find the big move. Sometimes it'll bounce off the 20 like it did here, right? After you have made a higher high and potentially a higher low, holding on it. Look familiar? Look familiar. Bounce up again. But there's some news out there. I got a little bit deep into it, but I wanted to bring it up anyhow. All right. So with that, we are seeing some off the bottom. Vive happened to be software. And so it just triggered me to talk about that because some of these software companies are starting to kind of get a little bit of traction off the bottom. And you'll notice over here, it didn't move the same as Microsoft. But what did we see, folks? We saw a sideways channel in here. In other words, had we seen that before in this whole move? We had not. And one interesting clue is we began to break right there above the 20, which we couldn't do here. We did not do that here. We did not do it here. We did not do it here. We didn't do it through any of this too, but we're bouncing off that level. We didn't do it here. We broke right below there, right there, and it was a very, very interesting indication, we have to say, for what we look at in terms of swing trades. That was fascinating because we did not get a higher high and we got a little bit of this action over here. Uh-oh, boom. And then, I mean, sometimes, you have to say, if you look at the technical indicators that are just like maybe straightforward and sticking right out in our faces, sometimes, just sometimes, I mean, they can be interesting and they can be helpful. And I've often said this, sometimes the market is, I know it's a hard taskmaster, but it can provide interesting information if we just kind of isolate and look at simple sort of indications too for what we're after, swing trading. All right. Um, a lot on that. We did need to review some of our trades. I'm going to keep the 20 on here so we could just keep looking at it through here. Now, we had some interesting and we had like 3 or 4 good. We had one bad. I'm going to start off with the bad. When I say bad, it wasn't necessarily bad, but it was in a class that we were looking at where we were talking about options and we said premium, or are we going to trade it for premium? Are we going to trade it for a position, which you can do with a short put, correct? Sometimes traders look for one or the other or both. Now within here, we had Google. Some still might be looking at it as a position, but what did Google do? Now Google did pull a little bit back. So this is one of the trades that we had put on recently. We looked at, and you can see where we had our swing trade, yeah, up to 500. But what have we done? We've continued to go down. So we didn't take on a an example stock trade here because we hadn't seen any indications yet. In fact, are we getting close to our 200, our 20-day, 20-day moving average? In fact, we are. We're just about there. By the way, do you see anything interesting with the 20? How about a prior high? Now, does it mean we're going to bounce off that level? No, it does not. But is it an interesting indication that some traders might look for? Uh, Breaking above highs and bouncing at trends. I would say, yes, it is. So we have to wait and see what happens. We sold a put on here when we looked at this, and we sold it at 355. So you can imagine it's not doing great. We did a July. Now, one of the things I'm going to say right now is that the way that the stocks are trading with so much move to the upside. Thank you. Yes, that actually is I'm sorry, guys, that is a 50. Correct. Thank you for pointing that out. I thought I hit 20. I did not. My bad, you guys. Watch what let's look at this. And by the way, there is a survey released in the chat. So that 50 is interesting here though too. Okay, so case in point though, let's look at that 20. Let's look at it through here. Thank you for pointing that out. This is what happens when I'm going a little bit too fast. Breaking above the 20 with a higher high and a higher low, touch, touch, touch. It's much closer, isn't it, than it was previously? Did we get a new high over here? How about the low? We got above it and we bounced. We bounced. Okay. By the way, did we see something interesting there with the 50? I'd say we did. Are we below that 20 right now? Clearly, we're below the 20 on this in this case. So sorry for the confusion there, but in this case, and by the way, that as actually makes a lot more sense in terms of a 20. It's much closer to the price range. But look over here with me. What might traders be looking for? Maybe a bounce off this level. Now, longer term, it went further down than we did anticipate. And prices did actually, you know, we'll see if they come through this level of support. Now, I do want to go back because we did take a look at this. I was looking at the 50 over this time frame, but let's stick with our 20 and we'll go from here. Breaking back up above the 20. You can see they did dip a little, but in general, are we breaking above the 20, bouncing through it? Now, in this case, it probably would have been the 30, that would have done better. Even the 50, actually, the 50 was way down here. This is much tighter to the range. This level right here didn't even touch our 20. But that was our example on Apple using the 20 as opposed to the 50. Wanted to correct that. Okay, again, there's a survey link in the chat. We got a little time on this one. Okay, now getting back to the point that I wanted to mention, we were right over here, and look at this. Boom. There's your 350. Coming back down, there is still a prior high, and as it does turn out, because we just looked at it, there's a 50 right there as well. So we could potentially get a bounce off that level. Okay. Now, this is going to be very, very interesting. Uh, at this point, when the implied volatilities are incredibly high, what we're running into here are standard levels of, where we might be looking at deltas. And again, a delta is looking at basically, a delta is one thing on the delta is, for $1 increase in the price of the stock, the option will move up or down based on the delta. And traditionally, traders will look in this range, but when you're getting massive moves, massive, really, really big moves in the market like this, sometimes when the pullback occurs, and we didn't look at stock on this when we looked at the option and the 355. One of the things I'll say is that traders might be going 20 delta might be the higher range. So they might be going below like a core level over here because you've run up so much. It's not unusual for a stock to pull back 50% or more. So we need, I think, a lot of traders, I would just say this, a lot of traders might consider selling those lower deltas, in other words, further away from where prices are trading at, giving it more of a buffer zone. Because right now on this one, for this particular trade that we did, for our July. We sold this for 720, and look at it now. A 1 day move, it's already down $12. 1 day move on this, we're already off quite a bit. We're down 375 on this guy. Okay. So I did say yesterday some traders would potentially take this as a position as well at 355. They might be happy trying to own it around this level. So I'm just going to keep that trade on. But just as a side note there, all right? So park that in the back of your minds for sure. Now, onto some of the other trades that we were looking at. AVGO. AVGO had continued to run up. Now, here's kind of an interesting predicament that we find ourselves in. There is our 20-day moving average. By the way, that closely followed that trend up too. You got in here, but that was an earnings bounce. And it's been a little bit tricky on this one, but you're above the 20 holding it. You kind of break out there. One of the key issues here, and I'm going to zoom into a 1 year now on these, and that's this. Look at earnings. Earnings is tomorrow. So what do you do on something like this? It's a consideration. That was our target range, and we've begun to go up higher. I mean, what do you guys oftentimes do on this? It is a run up. You've got to be considerate of this move, and you say, well, I could take half off the table. I could take the trade off the table. Um, I'm not gonna, we don't have the news. I think it's after hours. Yeah. So on something like this, you're really just saying, okay, we took this move as a bounce breakout right here. We're up roughly, I'm just going to say roughly 36 points, multiplied by 25. Um, it's really kind of a risk. It could jump up, it could break down. It is earnings, and so it is risky. So just park that in the back of your mind. I might let it go till tomorrow and just see what we get, because it is after hours. Kind of go from there. Okay, that's one. Also, Oracle. We did Oracle too, and Oracle did fulfill that dual pattern that we were talking about previously. We said there was a pattern over here, a longer term pattern, right? And we hit that pattern like right over here. We also hit the shorter term pattern, I want to say about right there. And so this trade is done, but you can see the flag pattern as we normally will look at it like this, right? But this was a longer term one and a shorter term one, pattern within a pattern as well. What was the other one we had in here? I thought we had, okay, just a second. Right here. And then we've got, oh, AKAM. Okay. AKAM on this one. Yeah, so still some strength in here. What do we do on this guy? I think it was just a short put in the class that we were looking at. This one's probably doing okay. It's up a little bit today. Let's click on it. Yeah, it's probably doing decent. I mean, it's up a little bit. That's just the short put. But okay, so that's what we've got in terms of our prior trades. Was there? I think there was maybe. Oops, sorry. One more. DXCM, Dexcom. DXCM was right there. And this was sort of a breakout trade. There's your 20 period moving average. There it is bouncing off of some highs and finally, really clearing above that level. Okay, as you could see here. So this could be an interesting one to keep an eye on this one, though. What did we have? We just had the 70. This one's probably still doing, oh, it's down $13, but that was as of yesterday. There's the 70 right there. The 70 strike we'd sold for June. So there's only 16 days left, but there you go. This was position or premium. That's how we were kind of positioning this trade. All right, now let's move forward and let's talk about some other potential scenarios, some setups out there. In fact, I will do this. I'm going to go ahead and just give us an idea of what's really been moving on a sector rotation basis this week. So again, what we're looking as we take each of these 11, not the SPX down here, but we take 11 sectors and we say, compared to the S&P 500, which one of these are really showing the most kind of strength this week? There maybe are a couple of standouts, actually, as we look for potential swing trades and then really dive into the charts a little bit better. Look at this right there. See the move to the upside? Technology. So clearly technology's there. I want to look at technology. I want to look at some of those groups. In fact, we could start off with some of the semiconductors that maybe haven't moved as much. There was one that I did catch with the super trend in that group that's kind of in a pullback mode. And then, by the way, energy is the other one that I think, there are materials as well, but energy looking a little bit stronger here too. So these two areas in terms of swing trading could be of interest. If you guys don't have this one, I think some of you don't. It's not a think script, but just in case, think scripts aren't guaranteed for timeliness or accuracy, but it is a grid. And so I will share this grid with you. Again, it has within it relative sector strength. And with that relative sector strength, it compares the strength of the move of each of the stocks within the S&P 500, within each one of these sectors to the S&P 500 itself. Okay, got it. Yep, you guys caught the 50-day as well. Perfect. Thank you for noting that. Here you go. So this is sector strength, really, really short term, but can give us some insight as to what might unfold next week or the week after, perhaps. So I'm just going to say sector. Well, yeah, let's just put it in here. Sector rotation grid. Okay. All right, there you have it. Again, to plug this in, so you've got to just go to the setup up top, open shared items, plug it in right there, just copy and paste, hit preview, and it'll put it in as that name if you guys like it. I just name them what they are, and then you'll have it. But let's dive into that right now. But that is an interesting area that we could still look at in terms of where we're seeing some strength. Now, some of those, like for example, MCHP. Microchip. There you go. So it's had a little bit of a pullback relative to some of the stocks that have just really busted up higher. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at that. And you see the possible sideways consolidation pullback after 100 here. So there's 100. There's your pullback. I think, let me just put this out here if we got it. So this is a think script. Again, not guaranteed for timeliness or accuracy. This is the one, and yeah, we did just barely. Yeah, so you got the move off the bottom here. This is using an ATR. I talk about this in my class from last week in terms of ThinkScript, where we did develop a scan. That's how I found this, but you could see it right. Oh, it's flipping back and forth. It was green for a second. It did come up on the scan, which is interesting. It might want one more day follow through right now, but technically you might be getting a close above the high to low day potential. It's not there yet. The market's got to close. Still got about roughly a half an hour to go, but it still could close above the high of the low day. Could this be one of those in that sector group that could move? Let me go ahead and share this with you guys too, in case you don't have it. This is going to show it to you on the charts. I do have the scan right here, but this is just the super trend. Okay. Before I dive into it, guys, if you're finding value from these discussions, smash that like button. It lets us know that you are finding value. In addition, be sure to follow Ben and I on X. There's my handle right there, where we do talk about different setups and other items as well that you can just keep an eye on out there. But I'll just throw this out here in the chat in case you are interested. Kill that now. All right, to follow us. By the way, Ben Watson, CS. And also, this is all I'm going to mention, and then we'll just move on. But did want to state that on YouTube, follow us on Trader Talks if you're not already doing so. Got quite a few folks that do follow us right now, and I'll just pull this up here. I wanted to go into playlists and actually share that playlist of the ThinkScript. If you guys did want to capture that scan, it is right there. You can scan for those super trend signals. If you don't have it, I think many of you do. Copy the link and we're good. But yeah, you can subscribe right over here to Trader Talks. A lot of great stuff from our coaches, a lot of great stuff from Ben, of course, on the road as well. Okay, now I'll post that in to the chat so you have it. Okay, very good. Now, let's continue on with this. So that is MCHP. Now, some might want to wait for some indication of the possibility of a bounce right through here, just to get us kind of moving a little bit. I mean, are we gonna, can we bounce out of this range? We do see the flag pattern. We see some things going on. Now, if we were looking to possibly sell options and using something less than a zero point 0.2 delta, or at least less than or equal to 0.2. In other words, that's the lower end of the range. Where does that put us at in terms of maybe not getting into this right now. I want to do actually, let's just do both on this one as an example. Example trade. Let's see the June. Let's see. We'll look at June and July. There's only 16 days left, but applied volatility is still kind of high. Now here's my 20. So that's about 87. Where's 85? So what does 85 look like on the chart? 80, wow, still not that far down. What does an 80 look like? That's the prior low right there. As you can see, take a look at it right now. So there's your AD. Well, there's not a ton there in terms of premium, right? There's a lot of open interest. What about July? We're going out of ways, but we're giving it some room. There's 80. So that's 45 days left to expiration. But if somebody was just looking for a premium here, that spread is still actually quite wide, isn't it? Look at it right there. Mm, it is a little bit. There's not a lot of open interest, and you can see the spread is wide. So you could shoot for a middle range, and that is our mark right there. Our mark is listed as $1.75 to try to get something like this. Um, if somebody was looking for, try to capture premium, of course, short options can be assigned at any time, but that puts you all the way down here. Okay, that's near a prior high. If somebody was looking to be, maybe take a position there, whatever the case might be, I'll throw it in as an example just so you could see it, how this would work relatively speaking. But I'm not going to shoot for the 175. In fact, excuse me, 175 or even 180. I'll put it in over here as an example. Let's just take a look and read the dialog box. It's about a $795 buying power effect. Of course, always be mindful of the max loss. If we were to get assigned shares and the stock were to go to zero, that's what that represents without getting out. That's the max loss. But there's the credit. I'll just send it through right now. Take a look at that one. 182. Okay, so on the stock though, if somebody was looking at this, what are we getting in terms of our 20 period moving average? 20 period. Let's click it again. There we go. Now I see. Yep. All right. I put those in there. We're right, very, very near it, right? We're not quite there. A little bit of a bounce off a prior high, low. We don't always get like the perfect entry in these classes. So what I'll do is I'll just do like 50 shares here. But what we'll do is we're gonna put a stop relatively close. So a potential exit level just below this point, but the possibility of a move to the upside. And that's actually a really, really big move if it were to unfold. I mean, in terms of just like the initial projection of this flag pattern, it is quite large. This one hasn't run yet, but it's going to be substantially higher. Let me just give us a number on that real quick so we could see what just a general kind of a move would be if that were to hit and move up. Just giving you a general rough idea here. So let me duplicate this. I'll pull it over here off that low. So probably somewhere in this range, just around 135 or 134 or so. So let's set it up just with a half, really half of the 100 number, half of a round lot. And we'll see. And sometimes traders might add that additional 50 if in fact you get a breakout here. But we'll do this as an example. Okay. So really good spread, obviously, on the price. We're at 7 million shares traded today. Let's do a buy custom with an OCO bracket. Go to cancel over here. Like I said, we'll go 50 shares and link this up. This was on the upside potential target about 130. I'll just say 133. It's closer. And this one was down a little bit further down. You can see the range, but we'll adjust these on the chart. Always go back and take a look at your dialog box and check out those levels. But as we do this, you can see I need to raise that stop up. It wasn't that low. So I'm going to pull the stop up, just drag and drop. I'm not going to give it too much room here for a downside move because we haven't broken out yet. Like I said, some signs of the super trend kicking in. We'll see if it actually does go. It's been going back and forth, but there you go is the target. Okay, there's the fill. Okay, so this is a play on that move to the upside. And what was some of the basis behind it? Well, there's the potential to move above that 20 period. The trend is clearly higher here, the 20 period moving average. The trend is here. A super a super trend flash and a tighter stop level. And then again, what caused us to look here? Well, it was that momentum that we're seeing in the sector. We're seeing still a lot of momentum within semiconductors. So with that said, the other one that we looked at was energy. So let's go into energy. Energy was, if you look into energy, you're going to find this is MPC. Now, an interesting thing I am familiar with a number of these companies, but in terms of where a lot of these companies can be profitable at the price of oil, this is one of the companies that actually has a much lower like break even point, and that can often be tracked because if we come over here, sorry, we're going to be seeing the super trend on everything. Just ignore that for a second. When the price of oil is up this high, if you look where we're at, I mean, 90s, mid 90s, right? MPC can break even. Now it's been mentioned, and don't quote me on this, but I've looked into this previously. I'll zoom in now on the 1 year. Oil right around $15 a barrel. Now we're at 90 something, so it's a long ways away from it. That can help to explain why this trend is so strong. You follow me? We're, we're trending up, and what have we seen? Chaos in the price of oil. But if your break even is somewhere, let's say, for example, near 15, we're way above that. We're at 90, right? And we don't know where that's going to go. That still hasn't been settled completely. And what have we done? We've gone down, up, and sideways. Now, did I find this off the super trend? I did. And it can be helpful because, again, it's looking for an ATR, which I explained in that video. But if you look over here with me, folks, we're right there. We talked about this. It looks a lot like, I don't know if it'll unfold the same way, but it looks a lot like Delta did. DAL before we ran. You'll just see some similarities here. Doesn't have to, but traders do like to see those right angled triangles. Do you see it right here? Right angle, near resistance. It's not exactly the same. This is one that we did trade too. We already, yeah, we did trade this guy. We had a short put on this too. Yeah, so we're up on this is a couple weeks ago. We're just letting this one probably expire. Well, if it does expire, it's down at 65. A little side note. We did do that one. And as an example, but let's go back to MPC. Okay. So on MPC here, breaking out. Now, where might this trend go? What we can still do in here, I mean, there is a bit of that right angle triangle, and you know, that there's I would actually still say that a flag pattern looks the most kind of obvious here in terms of just like sticks out at you. There is the projection off that initial leg, the second leg before we're breaking out, and I don't know if we're going to break out, but we're right up near that level. It might be one of the higher closing highs right there. So there's your target. Let's set a trade up here. I'm just going to do, it's kind of expensive. I'm just going to do 50 shares again on this. And what we can do is we can, and by the way, are we just above our 20 period moving average? Yes, we are. But I'm going to erase these next time, folks. The closing price will put us closer. There you go. So there's your 20 period right there. Now that's what we should be at. So this is the 20 period closing moving average. It's been elusive to me in this class, but we finally got it there. And this one is we were looking at the other one correctly before too. The 20 close as opposed to the 50, we flipped it. But just to show you, are we above this? Yes. Now what I'm going to do is I want to highlight one thing and just explain this. That 20 can also be the potential exit level too on a swing trade. And I want to mix this one up with you guys a little bit. I want to mix it up. We're going to use that one as our potential exit at this point, just to be mindful of, one to kind of track. So we're just going to do, we're just going to watch this, but that could be a target here. We can look for a target, but let's just ignore the stop. So if I come over here by custom stop limit, I'm sorry. Um, actually, let's just do the stop and we'll flip it to a limit. To the upside. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and just flip this over here. We'll go to a limit and we'll go to GTC. And that level was going to be at, here we go, 50 shares. We have the target. We're going to be watching the 20 period moving average for it to break below. Notice it's actually in a really interesting spot for the possible exit if this doesn't run here. It's giving some interesting indications. It's broken above that 4 range ATR from the super trend, and we're just breaking above this level. So park that in your mind. We'll see if it does go, but we'll watch the 20 for a potential exit to try to see if we can get something like this. See the super trend signal right there? A little bit longer term. This was also 1-2 from right there. But when you broke, you actually broke below here. That wasn't actually great timing there, but um, it was okay here. But anyways, just as an idea, just to mix things up a little bit. Let's go back. Gosh, plenty to talk about. Here we go. Let's go back over here. Where was our target at? Target was about 290. I'm going to go just below that target level, and I'll show it to you right here. 290. Okay. So always take a look at the order dialog box. We'll send it through right there. And we're good to go there. All right. So we've got, in this case, just a target, but the stop again will be the 200-day moving average. One more to look at, and we'll be done. But in oil, another one too that might have a little bit lower break even than a lot of oil companies would be Oxy. Now, I'm just going to show you Oxy. I think yeah, I don't know if I have time to put another one in, but just as an example, I can put it in after class, no problem. But look at Oxy over here. It did give us a little bit of a super trend note right there. We've seen it before, though. We've seen it before. We are getting some higher lows off the bottom and, sort of similar highs. Have we broken this downward trend? We have not yet. So some considerations, you can see I kind of just drew a longer term sort of triangle here connecting those bottoms, right? We don't know, but it's in oil. We'll see if it does actually begin to break here or not. What I would say is this is different from MPC. Some traders might just say, hey, you know what, Mike, I'm looking for a move above the recent highs there to see if this big trend can start to go. We are above the 20 period moving average. Okay, a couple more honorable mentions just to highlight for you that have been moving. I showed you off the bottom, VEEV. Okay, what about JCI? A little bit of a bounce right here. Sideways range. It's been really, really choppy, I know. High or low. Can we begin to break out here again? What might be an interesting area to keep an eye on? Maybe that area. Oops, that area right there. But for some traders, it could be a watch list candidate. All right, everybody. Hey, if you found value, smash that like button. It's been good being with you. Thank you, Ben, for being in the chat and helping out. There is a survey link, folks. There's only 2 questions there. Love to see the surveys. um, there's a note in there on the surveys. If you had any topic requests or anything along those lines, comments, love to see the comments. And Yeah, just 2 questions if you're able to fill that out. But be sure to follow Ben and I on X, Ben Watson CS, Mike Fairbourn CS. I think I've plugged in, sent everything in that I had mentioned for you guys. And hey, have a great rest of the day. Hope you got some value out of this. But really looking at highs and lows, we can still see some strength around that 20 period moving average and using other indications um, for price moves around these levels. So always just kind of park that in the back of your mind. And one last note, when you're looking at those moving averages, some of the moves, and remember, this is not really in technology. We're still using the 20. What was the other thing I mentioned? The 30, the 50 period moving averages. Let's just see how the 50 does, because a lot of these just don't move as fast as tech. Here's the 50 right there. Okay. Yeah, maybe a little bit better, just as an idea on what you were focusing in on in terms of finding a moving average that's moving with the type of trends you looked at. So we like to do that in the swing trades and capture sort of some of those bigger moves. On that, everybody have a great rest of the day. Take care. See you next time.